Welcome to my Just Jenny podcast. My friend Dr. Tony Youn is with me, and Tony, I when we met, I know I interviewed you for Stitches, but that was published in 2011. I didn't meet you in 20. When did you come on my show for the first time? Do you have any
It
recollection?
was well, so the original In Stitches book came out in 2011, and then we had the paperback that came out, I think, in 2012. So I'm assuming that was
That was
when,
it.
yeah, I
Mhm.
think they must have sent that book to you and you read it. And then since then, like obviously we've stayed in touch, which is great. And I've seen you do so much cool stuff, and I've got your podcast. So congratulations.
Yeah, I mean, seeing me do so much cool stuff. I mean, this is where I was headed. So you have that book, you have the age fix also, and then I playing God was another one that you had, and I feel like we've talked about all of them because they were all just you're an author and really good books, and now you're also like an internet celebrity. You were picked as like TikTok's creator of the year. You won some contest and like 100 grand, and all of that's very, very exciting and fun for someone like me to watch because I know you. So like I'm proud of you and excited. But I'm struck by your path because in reading In Stitches, right? Or in reading Playing God, I think about your kind of windy road through high school and college and medical school to being a doctor, not just any doctor, a doctor that's super well respected long before you became internet famous. Like you had a waiting list
Thank you.
before you were
Yeah.
on the internet. Well, I want people to know that, Tony, because I know you happen to be a really good doctor, not just because you looked at my niece's leg after she cut it in New Orleans during Mardi Gras by falling onto furniture because she was a jackass, but like you were so ethical and you were like, look, is it the most beautiful stitch work? No. Would I open it to redo it for sport? No. And which is really ethical of you
No, thank you.
because there might be another doctor that would be like, you know what, this is a quick way for me to whatever. And no, that's not you. But I know you've had this waiting list and people respect your work, but then you became this other thing. So what is that like for you having gone this funny path to medicine and now you're over here in
It's yeah, it's kind of
yeah.
crazy. I mean, I think a lot of it stems from being like this skinny uh, Korean kid growing up in
Mhm.
a small town in the middle of Michigan, where I was like we were the only Asian family in the whole city, the only really minority family in the whole city. And I was skinny. I had big glasses. I had huge braces. I had this big
Yeah.
jaw. And so I think there was always this part of me that always felt inferior to everybody else. And there was this part of me that wanted to be like everybody else. But at the same time, there was also that part of me that always wanted to impress my parents, because you want to make your parents proud, especially as a middle child in an Asian family.
Sure.
And so I think all of that kind of combined into this desire to always do more and be better. And so becoming a doctor, then becoming a plastic surgeon, and not just becoming a plastic surgeon but like focusing like I want to be like the best plastic surgeon in my city. And then I started doing TV. I was on Rachel Ray show 25 times. Like, and there's this kind of like you want to. I think it's kind of like I've been rejected by so many like girls growing up,
Sure.
and always was like looking at the football players in high school and the swimmers in college, and was always kind of like the odd person out, that I think I always had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, that I wanted to kind of show them wrong. And it came with like my practice. When I started my practice 19 years ago, I sent letters to 25 plastic surgeons in my area asking anybody to help me, give me a job. I'm like, I will see your patients, I will take your emergency room call, do
The
anything.
whole
And
thing.
and nobody replied to me. And so at that point I thought, okay, like everything in life, I was like, okay, if they're not going to help me, then I'm going to take their work from them. And so it's kind of been this driving factor. Now, this has changed because the pandemic hits. My office is closed for 2.5 months. And I promised my employees that I'm going to keep them afloat, that I'm going to continue paying them. But this was March, and I literally had just paid off all my taxes, and I had very little money in my bank account. And I'm like, what am I going to do? So I started just creating content. And that's when everything kind of exploded. Because at the time I thought, I'm a doctor, and I offered to help at my hospital. I volunteered, but man, if they need me to help COVID patients, it's got to be really bad. And so I try to think like, what can I do to help people? And so I started creating content to entertain, to educate, and then it kind of exploded from there. And yeah, and so now I'm here where I'm at, and it's just weird because I get people who spot me all over the place and they want to take selfies. It's just strange. It's so strange.
Impacted your practice because even before this, when you've written about patients in a very appropriate way, never giving up privacy and changing all identifying factors, obviously,
Oh
because
yeah.
you have ethics. But how's it, you have talked before about how there have been patients, even before this, who came to you that you had to turn away because maybe they weren't quite right and
Mhm.
it wasn't in their best interest to be there. So, how do you navigate that now with patients who see you online and then they reach out to you because there's a bit of that, like, oh, well, maybe I'll go to him because he's a famous doctor?
There's a lot of difficulty there. I think the first thing is I get so many emails and DMs of like asking for advice, and I can't give any advice. Like
Mm,
I'm a doctor. Like I can't give you medical advice online if I don't
no,
know you.
no.
And then obviously there are those kind of random emails, and we get letters from people of like, help me. And it's like, you just can't help everybody. And then on top of that, you also have, you know, and you know, it's like, you know, you reach a certain level and people will come after you, you know, and I have
Yeah.
doctors who have tried to come after me because I think they're jealous. You know, I had the state medical board. The medical board of Michigan was investigating me like just a year and a half ago
Oh,
because of one of my Instagram reels. Believe it or not, I had an Instagram reel where I was criticizing the husband stitch. You know, the stitch where a woman has a baby
yeah,
and the husband to ask the doctor, "Hey, can you put a stitch in for me?"
I remember.
So I made this video and said, well, instead of putting a stitch in for her, why don't we make your you know what bigger?
That's
And I said, well,
right.
I could take
So
some
good.
filler and let's inject it in there and let's give you, I think I called it Vienna sausage or something.
Uh-huh.
Well, somebody reported that video to the state medical board. They claimed that I was angrily injecting men's you know what's, and the
You're
state medical board started an actual investigation of me.
That's crazy, actually.
It's nuts. So they call me up and they said, I need to ask you some questions. I said, sure, of course. And they go, do you inject men's you know what's angrily? Can I say the
You
P
could say
word?
anything you
Okay,
want.
good.
We are, yes, it's
So
all
they,
good.
so they say, Dr. Youn, do you inject men's penises with anger? And I'm like,
No.
are you kidding me? I'm like, I don't even inject out there at all. They're like, I need to ask you this. And then they're like, well, have you ever in anger injected a man's penis? I'm like, no. So it's just crazy sometimes, but yeah.
It is crazy because actually, again, the way I know you and the way you've been a part of my radio show prior to the podcast, you would come on and talk about alternatives to surgical procedures and like healthy living, not from a perspective of ridiculousness, not
Yeah.
from like woo woo stuff, just like
Yeah.
healthier living,
Yeah.
do the best you can kind of thing. And you've been very open about your own plastic surgery and how that had impacted you in your life. And really, your goal to only help people feel better about themselves. And anyone who can't figure out that what you're doing is parody and tongue in cheek,
Well,
like
I'm sure it was
that's,
somebody who was upset or jealous. Maybe that person wanted the husband stitch for his spouse or something like that, you know, and the spouse saw that and said, hey, you know, no way, forget it. I mean, if that's the case, hey, you know what, I'll do that again 100 more times. Like if I can help women that way. But
yeah.
you know, you put
Yeah.
stuff out there. And you know, the other thing that really hit is I was one of the early doctors to come forward saying that I do believe that breast implants can make some women
Sure.
sick.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, I mean, I had a lot of blowback from that. And from who would you guess? From male plastic surgeons.
I've
And
seen it.
some
Yeah.
females who were really upset with me. But you know what? It's like you got to put your truth out there. Like my goal is always number one is to take care of my patients
Yeah.
and to help people overall with their health. And you know what? If it makes some doctors mad at me because they don't make as much money, it so be it.
Yeah, look, I have seen online the way some people have kind of gone at you or put your face up in their TikTok angrily. And I've definitely defended you. There have been
Oh,
days
you're
that
so
I've
nice.
felt, well, only because it is unfounded. Knowing you for as many years as I do, and kind of the conversation we've had
Yeah,
prior
yeah.
to even being online, I just know that you are ethically solid. Like I'm not, it just never dawned on me to think that you would ever do anything that was not in the best interest of one of your patients or right. And in terms of they're being jealous of your content creation and then the money that you make because you've amassed this following, I'm like, dude, it's working. Like you are working really hard. It takes a tremendous amount of effort to record, to edit, to post, to figure out what you're going to post, to be aware of the zeitgeist, to know what's like the hot topic to be talking about. Like you synthesized it all and figured out a way to do it on the regular while also maintaining a medical practice. Like you work really hard. Like, why shouldn't you make money? And if they want to go create content, then they could start doing it. I really believe not that everyone could grow the following that you grew, because I think there's something special about you, but everybody can do content creation if they consistently work at doing it. You will learn. You'll just learn. It might take you 6 months, but you'll learn.
Mhm. I think that it's looking at it as a physician, I look at it differently now than I did when I first started. And when I think a lot of doctors look at social media, as a lot of docs will look at it as, how do I put education out there so I can get more patients? And for me
Right.
now, it's come more from a producer standpoint of like, how do I create a good piece of content that can educate but also entertain? Not
Yeah,
how do I get people to come to see me in my practice
I
or
get
buy
that.
this?
Yeah.
It's like, how do I create entertaining, educational information or content? And even it's not always educational, as you know, but at least something that entertains them. Because really that's what's going to work. It's not, I could post all these before and after photos and stuff like that, which a lot of plastic surgeons do. That's not what people are going to really enjoy. Like they
Yeah.
want to be entertained for 3 minutes,
Yeah.
that's what they want.
Yeah, and I find your content also, I mean, yeah, some of it's outlandish and ridiculous and I laugh and I don't know, I just like it because it's
Thank
funny.
you.
But I also think that you do give sort of the cautionary tale about what not to do because it's a ridiculous assertion that it's right for you to put in a BBL or whatever they're called. And is that what they're called? BBL, the butt lift thing.
The
What are the, oh,
Brazilian butt lift. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
BBL.
BBLs. Or kind of like when people have ridiculously big boobs and it's like for what? And even your honesty about some people having the breast implant illness, like I appreciate that coming from a plastic surgeon because denial of what's true doesn't make it untrue.
Well, and what's been going on is that, women throughout society have always been kind of told like, oh, shut up and sit down. We know better than you. And plastic surgery has been a patriarchy for a really long time.
Yeah.
And that is changing now. But I
Yeah.
think it's tough because I've been to some of our meetings where it's like, okay, this is a vaginoplasty section. This is a section where we talk about vaginal rejuvenation. And there's like 4 old white guys sitting up
Yeah.
there talking
Oh,
about it. That's like, oh,
oh,
come on. Like, this is not the way it should be. And there are
no.
definitely changes that are being made in our societies. A lot more women are getting involved. And I think it's so important because 90% of our patients are women.
Right.
But at the
Right.
same time, we need to respect women and their opinions. And I think that it's just been kind of in medicine, we have for a long, long time dismissed women's concerns,
Yeah.
you know, and
Right.
and and that's been a systemic problem in medicine for a very long time.
Yeah. And I also feel like we should take note of the fact that it is mostly women. And why is that? Why do women have to feel like they have to chase, I don't know, youth, chase some
Mhm.
perfection ideal that like we're never going to get? I mean, we see it unfortunately with celebrities who shall remain nameless when they overdo it with the fillers. And there's a doctor that's overdoing it with the fillers. And then like they look like a corpse because they're so waxy. And it's a strange disconnect from their face to their hands or just from their face to knowing how old they are. And I am all for anybody doing whatever she wants. Everybody knows I did my upper eyelids. I'm thrilled that I did my upper eyelids 5 years ago. I've only had Botox since because I'm afraid of other procedures at this point. Doesn't mean that one day I won't decide to do something or not. I don't know. But I don't ever want to look oddly at odds with my actual age. It doesn't like so there's a brain disconnect in there
Yeah.
that you
It's
get
a,
sort of lost in it.
it's a challenge because I do get a lot of patients who'll come in and they'll say, hey, I'm here for filler. And I look at them, I'm like, you don't really need anything. You look
Hmm.
great. But they're like, but I just drove an hour and a half to come see you and you're going to say no to me. And it can make for
Oh
a
my
very
gosh.
uncomfortable situation. Or I waited how many months for this appointment and now you're going to say no. And therein is the challenge. So I feel for the patients, who don't necessarily see what we see in the mirror, because there is dysmorphia. That's at least 1% of the population.
Yeah.
But as a physician too, sometimes it can be very difficult. It's a lot easier to say yes sometimes than to say no.
Sure. Yeah.
I expend a lot of energy, many, many days of the week trying to convince somebody you don't need anything. And it's going to make you look worse than better, as
That's the
they kind of
thing.
look at me and give me that side eye.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like there's that whole, everyone's putting Botox in their lips or they're overdoing it with filler. And like, I just like lip gloss. Would I like my lips to be fuller? Sure. Would I like them to have more pigment? Sure. Do I want a tattoo when I'm someone who gets cold sores? No. Do I want to deal with Valtrex? No. Do I want, you know what I mean? Like you got to know like what it's ultimately really, do I want to have to keep doing that every 3 to 6 months or what? I already, as someone who gets Botox, I have to get Botox every 3 months because I'm so active. It dissolves really quickly. Like it just doesn't ever stay in my system.
Now there's a new one that just got FDA approved that's
Yeah.
supposed to last upwards of 6 months. So
Does it really work like that?
I haven't tried it yet. It's called
Yeah.
Daxify, and
Yeah.
it's not widely used yet. They're doing a
Right.
really slow rollout of it, but the studies are showing 6 months, so we'll see.
Yeah, that would be great because it's really every 3 months. And I also have extremely strong facial muscles and a crazy strong corrugator muscle, this thing, and which is the V in your forehead for anyone listening. And it's like I look like Star Trek. And yeah, no, I mean Botox for me is both so that when I look in the mirror, I feel better, but it's also because I don't have the ability to have a poker face, and it helps me maintain a little bit of not sharing every single thing that I'm feeling when my forehead isn't going bananas. So it's part of why I do it. But the other thing I've noticed is now with, for a while we were a society of people being really body positive and body neutral and not obsessed with weight and weight loss. And you and I know weight is one of my things. And I work really hard to not be overweight for my body type, whatever. I don't care what anyone else does. But this Ozempic craze has created a market for plastic surgeons and dermatologists to say, oh, you have Ozempic face. Now you need filler. And I'm like, that's bad medicine. Ozempic face is just somebody lost weight.
Yeah.
And maybe they lost weight in their face because you lose weight. You might lose weight in your face. So what do you think about that when there are doctors who are like, yes, it is Ozempic face and we can fix that with.
So yeah, I think Ozempic Face essentially is a marketing. It's a marketing and PR. It's a way for people to create news and get in news articles by basically, saying, hey, let's talk about Ozempic Face. A couple of things with Ozempic / Wegovy / semaglutide that I have concerns about. I do think that really whenever you lose weight, you are going to lose volume in your face, and that's normal. It's a 3-dimensional process. It's something we actually was a co-author of one of the first papers that really described this process way back in 2004. And we talked about how the face loses volume as we get older, and injecting fat can help to rejuvenate the face naturally. The thing with Ozempic now, and I'm not a weight loss expert, but my concern is I do see, in addition to obviously people trying to use that as a way to get patients, I also see that there are plastic surgeons out there who are selling semaglutide, which is the active ingredient in Wegovy and Ozempic, that they get from compound pharmacies as a way to basically make money. And so
a peptide?
Well, it's the actual semaglutide. It's the active ingredient that causes the stomach not to move as quickly and to feel full and all of that. And so I know plastic surgeons who are doing that as a way to basically make money. And it reminds me of many years ago, the weight loss balloons when they came out.
Yep.
And you swallow this balloon, they fill it up with saline in your stomach. It takes up space in your stomach. You don't eat as much. And they advertised to plastic surgeons. And a lot of plastic surgeons said, hey, this is great. It's a quick way for me to make money. But you and I both know that, weight loss and maintaining a healthy weight, that's a lifelong thing. And to have a doctor have the audacity to say, hey, I've got a quick fix for you. I'm going to make some cash off this, but not to be a true obesity physician that can kind of follow them
I couldn't
year
agree
after
more.
year. It's
That's right.
ridiculous.
It is yeah, and that's why on the flip side, being bothered by an obesity medicine who prescribes medication appropriately is also absurd, because for somebody who has obesity who needs it, it's going to be a lifelong thing.
Mhm.
So let somebody have the help that they need, because they're still going to have to watch what they eat and exercise and do all the things they have to do to maintain not just a healthy sort of weight, but healthy bone density and healthy lean muscle mass and all the things that really go into how we should be treating people with obesity and need to lose weight, especially women as women age.
Mhm.
It's not such a simple story.
No, and I think that therein is the challenge for physicians. It's like if you're going to help people with this, you have to really, spend a lot of time with them, and it has to
Yes.
be for the long haul. Like this is not
Yes.
a, hey, swallow this balloon, it's great, and I'm going to make 2 grand off of this, which unfortunately some people in my specialty have done that type of thing.
Now, and the
And
balloon was a nightmare. The people with the balloon, there were a lot of complications with that balloon a few years after, because that was back, I think, in like 2008, 2007, 2006, right?
I think it was around there and then after that. But there, to
Okay.
my knowledge, I think there were like 8 to 10 reported deaths from it, from different causes, like it eroding through the stomach,
Oh,
esophageal perforation, and things like that.
yeah.
And I think with Wegovy and Ozempic, we're still learning about these medications, and the side effects and potential long-term effects. I just would be cautious whenever you're using a medication that can profoundly alter, your body's weight and metabolism so much. You just want to be cautious.
Yeah, like with anything else, like
Yeah.
any other medication you might take. But I do think that the more we talk about it and sort of the less stigmatizing about any of it, the better off people are going to be, because there are people that really need some of these
Mhm.
pharmacological
Oh yeah.
modalities. And so why not make them available in the right way, make them available in
Yeah.
the right way?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yes,
My main
your
issue
med
is
spa shouldn't do it.
people in my field prescribing it and selling it
Agreed.
at a
You're right.
profit. That's what
It's
bothers me, because we're not trained in that. We're trained on doing breast implants and tummy tucks and lipo,
right.
not helping people lose weight for the long haul.
Listen, there was the lipo crazes of years before where it was not done the right way. Too much was removed or it wasn't removed the right way. And people had
Mhm.
scarring or weird fat deposits. And there wasn't the understanding that liposuction is really best used when somebody is at what's going to mostly be their actual weight
Yes.
to
Yep.
spot reduce. And people used it for weight loss. It's not for
Yep.
weight loss. Like,
Mhm.
so I think even that's had to have some shifts.
Yeah, and I think you make a very important point. When you are considering lipo, the ideal patient is a person at a reasonable, healthy body weight that has stubborn areas of fat that they just can't get rid of. Those, fat. The interesting about fat is that it really is inherited. And
Hmm.
how we deposit fat in our body is totally inherited from our parents. So if your mom or dad has got, let's say, a double chin, then you are very likely to have one.
Hmm.
If your dad has a pot belly, you could get one too. And I see
Yeah.
that in my patients all the time. Really, the fat pattern and our body shapes are so much given to us by our
So
parents.
much. That's so, I mean, it is so clear that like I'm grateful every day that my kids don't have my body type. They just don't.
Oh,
They
come
didn't.
on.
No,
Yeah.
no, I'm serious. Those genes, thankfully, I've struggled with obesity for my life. Like it's an ongoing every day, I have to live my life a certain way.
Yeah.
Both of them, my kids, thankfully, didn't get like my husband's genes are way more dominant. The physical genes, at least, are way more dominant than mine were. Fine, because I see it. I see. I got my mother's legs. I got her knees. I got her fat deposit. Like I just did. And to see, it's not even the aesthetic aspect of it. It's that when I know that my daughter won't have the pain that I had
Yeah.
societally in a sense,
Yeah.
because she's able to just things fit her. Like
Yeah.
I never had a life like that. Like I never had a life where I could just as a kid put on the same pair of jeans that my friends were wearing.
Mhm.
Like she can just put on clothing regardless of whether she's 5 pounds heavier or 5 pounds lighter. She's 22. It's always weight fluctuates. So oh my God, I'm so grateful for that, which is kind of weird because you should care about what's on the inside, but we are a society that also cares about what's on the outside.
I mean, that's never going to change. I
Right.
mean, as much as we all know how unfair society is, especially to women as they get older, it's unfortunately it's always been like that. And I think we
Yeah.
can push against it. And I think that there's an interesting menopause has been so much a topic over the last several months in the news. I think
Yep.
it's been so
Finally.
great. Yeah, it's been
Oh,
great that that's been such a big topic in the news because I think women are finally and men are realizing that there are changes that occur in menopause to women's bodies that are no fault of their own,
yep.
and these changes are fine. Like, this is just the way life is, and if they want to fight it, then by all means do that. But there's nothing wrong with you if you go through menopause and you find that you've gained some weight. Like,
Right.
this is unfortunately life.
This is our bodies, and I'm convinced it's the movie stars because all the movie stars that finally, like in the past, I don't know, 10 years became part of social media and everybody's like very attached to them. They're all going through menopause. Like you have Jennifer Aniston, you have Courtney Cox, you have all like these women that we've seen at Gwyneth Paltrow. All these women are now going to go through menopause in front of us. And
Well,
so
there
they,
was
yeah.
did you see that recent video with Gwyneth about what she eats in a day and
Yeah,
like,
I mean, I was going to talk about it and I may still, but so many people have, but
yeah.
look, I can't really fault her for saying that many days she eats broth at lunchtime. I can't because that's probably truthful. Like I'm sure she has days she eats like a lot of food and days she doesn't. And like that's most women who work at controlling their weight. It's just,
Yeah, and I think therein is the challenge is you feel for somebody like her who's such in the spotlight, and for her to keep that figure that she has to eat that way. I mean, it's terrible that society
yeah,
puts those expectations, on women like her, like Jennifer Aniston, and all the other women who are into it and entering their 50s and they're going through
yeah.
menopause and they're finding that they have to do that type of stuff to keep that figure. Otherwise, they're going to be in the news for, oh, look at how much weight she's gained. What else are you going to do?
No, I actually, it didn't bother me. It was honest. It didn't bother
Yeah.
me. And I've gotten a lot of shade when I put up what I eat in a day videos. I've gotten a lot of flack for people saying, you don't eat enough calories. You need to eat more. You don't eat this. You don't. And I'm like, first of all, I'm not 4 years old and growing. I'm not 16 and growing, and I'm not having any more children. I'm 53 years old. I'm perimenopausal. To me, it's as detrimental to women to have someone like me show up online eating breakfast, lunch, dinner, and two snacks and hearty meals at every turn and tell them that that's how I'm maintaining my weight. Because that's a fucking lie. Like, I probably eat 2 meals a day cumulatively with however I choose to eat it. And my calories can't be super high or I will gain weight. That's just how it goes. So the fact that Gwyneth is being honest about it, I made soup yesterday that was brothy. I mean, and it's in my fridge because then maybe I'll drink that instead of eating chips in my closet, like in the pantry closet. That's not my clothing closet, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so it's just, you can't win. It's almost like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't in our society. Like, if you don't watch your weight, then you're going to get called fat. If you
Mhm.
do watch your weight, you're going to get called crazy.
Yeah. No, I think that you've hit the nail right on the head. And therein lies a challenge for women who are perimenopausal and postmenopausal because they're trapped.
Yeah.
You can't win either way.
No.
And that's where I think that that discussion and even bringing this up, and hopefully people who hear you saying this, they're going to say, wow, that's me. And I feel better because it's not just me that,
Yeah.
went into my early 50s and now I've gained 15 pounds. And where did that come from? Because I'm not, my life hasn't changed at all.
That's
And
what
then we get
everybody says.
people
Yeah.
yelling at them, calories in, calories
Yeah.
out. That doesn't help any because
No.
it has
No.
nothing to do with that.
Right. And the truth is, you do ultimately have to eat less. Like, you can do the same things you've always done and start to gain weight
Yeah.
in perimenopause and menopause. And that's not made up. Our fluid retention changes, the way we collect fat changes, our bodies change. And it's maddening and weird. And if you don't lean into it and get that, like, it's okay, you've earned this, you've earned it by living a life. Like,
And you know
that's how
what's
you have to see it.
And what's really interesting is in my field, which we treat 90% women, I don't remember ever reading an article about how women's bodies change in menopause.
Yeah.
It's people ignore it. It's just not even been talked about. So I think
Yeah.
that discussion is so, so important.
Dr. Mary Claire Haver, who is also a TikTok famous doctor and a friend of mine, she does the show all the time.
I know
And
Mary Claire.
I love her.
Oh, we're good friends.
Oh, we're good friends.
Yeah, she
Oh,
mentioned me in her
really?
book. Yeah, I'm in
Oh
the
my God.
acknowledgments. Yeah.
I read the book. Why did I miss that part? I love her. She's such a good person. And like, she's been doing my show since before she became like Dr. Mary Claire Haver.
Mhm.
Cause I know how to pick them, Tony.
Oh yeah.
And she talks about this, that back in medical school, they called women like me or women like her whiny women.
Hmm.
That's what we were called, whining about our bodies, whining about this, that, and the other thing. And that's what they were taught, that like you say you don't feel right, they're depressed, they're anxious, they feel fat, they just whine.
Hmm.
And she feels so bad today that that's how she was taught, and she's devoted her life to helping women.
Yeah.
But she says it too, if you do the same things you've always done and expect your body to not change, you're in for it.
I think that there is a place for, truly integrative medicine where,
Yeah.
you can take the best of the East and West, the best of traditional and more holistic. And I think
Yep.
there's a good medium there. And unfortunately, there are too many people who are on the extremes,
Yeah.
the one extreme where everything has to be natural and everything that's not quote unquote natural is going to kill you. And then the other extreme of the traditional medicine where they don't look at anything other than truly pharmacology and interventions.
Yeah.
And it really, like most things I think in life, the truth is in the middle there, and that's I think where we find our true best health.
Dr. Tony Youn, is there anything we could do at home to help with like the capillaries on the side of the nose? Like those, I feel like we get these red areas. Like, is there, or do we have to go get them zapped at a doctor's office?
You have to get them zapped, unfortunately,
I
because
thought
those
so.
are blood vessels, and blood
Yeah.
vessels, no cream is going to get down there to do anything to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, vessels have got to be zapped. The good thing with something like that is you go to a good dermatologist and they can zap them. You'll actually see them disappear. Like they go away
That.
right when you hit them. Those capillaries are very easy if the doctor has the right laser.
Okay. And so the at-home lasers aren't really at-home lasers. The ones that they sell online, it's not really true.
No, there are actually at-home lasers that can help. They're the effectiveness is not as good, because you
Okay.
have to make sure they're safe. And so there are lasers that you can use for hair removal. They
Yep.
can definitely work. I'm definitely a fan of red light. That's a
Mhm.
big thing in the holistic space, red light therapy. I think that's
Yeah.
great for the skin. And there are studies to show that it can be very beneficial for the skin.
Okay.
But at the same time, if you live in a tiny town and you have no access to a dermatologist or med spa or plastic surgeon, then by all means, you want to use some of those at-home lasers. No question, I think they can definitely help. But most people find that they take a lot longer to work. You have to do it yourself, and the spot size is very small. So I can't imagine trying to do both legs with one of those at-home lasers. That can
No,
take a long, long time.
it could take a long, long time. What about women? I know a lot of women complain about their neck and their jawline, but they don't want a whole facelift. But I've been told that you either do a facelift, like you wait until you do your whole, that you look weird if you just sort of try to segment the face work, like jaw versus face versus
I
little
I
parts.
actually disagree with that.
Okay.
So if you do have true laxity, really, looseness, your neck is drooping, you've got jowls, and you say, look, I just want to kind of tighten that, but I don't necessarily want to do the rest of my face. How's that going to look? And I'll give you a good example. And I have I'm not her doctor. I can't tell you she's
Okay.
100% had it. Look at Helen Mirren. Okay, about 5 to 10 years ago,
Yeah.
she has a completely sharp neckline. Okay,
Yeah.
I think she's had a facelift in some time in the past, but her face has normal wrinkles and all of that.
Yeah.
She still has some excess skin of her eyelids. Do you think she looks unnatural?
No, I think she looks gorgeous.
So, and for me, I think she looks great, but
Yeah.
she's got this perfect neckline, which now in the last few years, things have gotten a little bit, looser because it only lasts so long. But my belief is that probably 10, 15 years ago, she had a true facelift. They tightened things up. But the rest of the face, they probably didn't do much with because I don't think she had her eyelids done or anything. And that's a good example of somebody who basically treated that area, that segment, and left the rest basically alone. It still looks great.
So you can do a facelift that's just the bottom, or do you have to do the top? Like
So
how you could just do the neck and
yeah,
chin.
yeah. So the way we look at it is plastic surgeons, we divide the face into thirds. There's the upper third of the face, which is your forehead and your eyebrows. There's a middle third of the face, which are your cheeks. And there's a lower third of the face, which is basically the cheek hollow down, which includes the upper neck.
Yeah.
A facelift is a term used to describe a lower face and upper neck lift. That's it. Okay, so if
Oh.
people come to me, they go, oh, Dr. Youn, I had a facelift. Look, my eyebrows are higher. Like, no, that's not a facelift. That's a brow lift. People might say, hey, Dr. Youn, I had a facelift. Look, my cheeks are lifted. No,
Yeah.
no, that's a mid facelift. A facelift is better called a lower face and upper neck lift because that's what it technically treats. And you can
Got it.
incorporate some of the cheeks in there. In my office, we just call it a lower facelift. But that lower facelift equals lower face and upper neck lift.
And the lower facelift is in New York, they charge like maybe it's a whole,
There's some doctors charging
60 to
200
90,000,
grand. No,
60 to
200
90.
grand.
Oh, really? Because I've seen
Yeah.
$90,000. I don't understand. Is that the going rate? Like, what's the going rate for a facelift?
So it depends on where you live and who does it. So in New York City, that's probably the most expensive. And there are
Yeah.
certain plastic surgeons there who are really well known for their facelifts. And what happened is after the pandemic,
Yeah.
and everybody had all this money to spend, their rates went way, way up. And you heard stories of $150,000 plus facelifts. Some of them are from really, really well-known plastic surgeons who've lectured on facelifts, and some of them are just from like social media stars.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
No, those prices have been dropping, is my understanding. And at some point they'll get back to, I think, Earth.
Yeah.
But yeah, but a lot of it's kind of where you have your surgery at.
Okay.
And it's New York and LA, and I've heard Miami, they can have some pretty high prices.
Okay. And if someone goes to Michigan, if someone goes to you, what's your typical facelift for a regular patient?
Like a cost of it.
Yeah.
So actually all my prices are on my website,
Oh,
dryoun.com. So if
okay.
people
You
are
list
truly
it.
curious, go to my
Oh,
website.
that's
But
good. Okay.
I
Yeah.
think
I love
I
that you do
can't,
that.
I think I'm like 15, 20, something like that. And I think I've
That's
charged more than most
reasonable.
anybody in town.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's not crazy. Like that's not $100,000.
no, it's interesting. There was a doctor years ago who charged $150,000 for a facelift and made news. I never heard of this doctor before. And I actually had a patient come in to see me who was a reality star who had a facelift by this doctor probably like 3-4 years before. And the patient told me, I spent 150 grand on this. And I'm like, I'm really curious to see how this looks. And it was nothing special. Like, and she still had some recurrence of the looseness and stuff, but it was
This what
150
yeah.
grand. So
Oh,
it's one of those where
crazy.
sometimes you raise your prices and maybe you only have one out of every 10 or 12 people that will actually pay it, but then you only do one out of every 12 surgeries that you otherwise would, and you make the same amount of money. Why I don't charge to that, because I know people who are just social media docs, plastic
Sure.
surgeons, and they charge 150 grand.
I've seen
Could
it.
I charge that? I probably could, but
Yes, at
my
this point.
worry is like, what if
Of
I
course.
do that and somebody doesn't get this great result? Like, I don't want to answer those like, I paid you
It's
150 grand.
stupid. And also
And
you don't need to do that at this point.
I
Like
just, it's not
actually keep your
why.
medicine, right? And keep your medicine
Yeah.
as because you are that guy anyway. So the more you keep your medicine practice as it is, in a sense, obviously raise your price a little bit, normal, competitive, make
Oh
money.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't. That's what you should do. But I think it's better for your brand anyway, because you have the TikTok like notoriety and the fame. You can make money that way. However, you guys do that, and then you keep your practice really clean. Do you know what I
Well,
mean?
part of it is if you're charging $150,000 for a facelift, then you're only going to get a small segment of the population. And honestly, I like seeing my patients. I have teachers, I have doctors, I have,
Yeah,
police officers, I have people in the military, like
it's
all
really
sorts of people
nice.
that come to see
Yeah.
me. And I don't want to just have a bunch of rich socialites. Like, that's just
No,
no
I
fun.
also feel like Dr. Yun, that's not been your MO ever. Like again, in a way, if anybody gives you a hard time about where you are now, you should just give them your books that you wrote years ago. Because in a sense, they almost read like evidence about like of the who you are, proof of the who you are. that you were the kind of doctor that wanted to help people, that you were the kind of doctor that when people came to you after going to other physicians, you tried to help them best you could. And if you couldn't, you told them that too. Like you've never been the doctor who was just looking to make a fast buck in a way that would compromise your integrity or worse, like their health.
Yeah, and I think the hardest part is you get so invested in patients. And I think the biggest challenge is when you have somebody who has a true complication, and it may be nothing that you did, but
Yeah.
something happens. And for me, when that happens, it's like, yeah, I beat myself up and I keep going over my head, like, what could I have done differently to prevent this? And almost most of the time there's nothing. It's just
Right.
stuff happens and it's torturous. And I think that's why I'm not going to be doing this when I'm 75.
Right. I
Because at
get
some
that.
point,
I
like,
understand
I
that.
just can't keep worrying about my patients all the time, which is what it
Right.
is now. It, has been for the last 18 years of practice, where it's like, I'm always worried that something bad's going to happen.
I understand that.
And I'm happy to carry that burden for them. But at some point, I think it's like, I've got to let it go and be like, okay, like I've done my time.
Yeah, I think about patient, like I know one patient who did pass away after a breast reduction. She had a blood clot and she was not warned, as far as any of us know, that this is going back to 2011 or 2012. She passed away. And um, I don't think anybody said to her, look out for a blood clot after the surgery, because she was by herself in her
Oh, geez.
apartment. She didn't have compression
Oh,
tights on, or those leg covers that we
yeah.
have now. There's the inflate and deflate. So when you have a surgical procedure that is more than minimally invasive, like a breast reduction or a tummy tuck, any of those sort of mommy makeover conceptual things, how long do you have to worry about those kind of complications, and what should patients do?
So yeah, that's a good question. A few things is, if you're going to, so whenever patients ask me, what's the worst thing that can happen to me if I have surgery?
You
I
could
always
die.
tell them, you can die.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you
I
can
mean,
die.
that's it. You can die,
It's very unlikely. If
but
you
it can
die, I'm going to
happen.
be devastated too.
Yeah. But you
But
could die.
yeah, but I
Yeah.
do want to, part of it is I do want them to know that you have to take it seriously. So
Yeah.
all my patients who have surgery, and most of them do general anesthesia, I tell them, you've got to walk. And when you're not walking, move your feet and legs. You got
Yep.
to prevent a blood clot. And I'll tell them, you could die if you get a blood clot.
Right. Good.
And then the other thing that, so really walking, moving your feet and legs, so important afterwards. Some patients you can actually go on Amazon now and you can buy those leg squeezy pumps that
Mm-hmm.
used to only be available in medical supply stores. But you can go on Amazon and get those for less than $100 now. So some patients will tell them, hey, go buy that and use that at home. And then really, I think what it really comes down to is length of surgery. And for me, I limit my surgery to about 5 hours, at the most 5.5. And even that, I try not to book those. Most of my operations are 4 hours or less.
Yeah.
Uh, but there are doctors out there where, they say, hey, I want an extreme makeover, and they'll book you for 10 hours of surgery. I am proud to say I don't know where the ICU is in my hospital.
Oh,
I
I
couldn't
love
get there
that.
without looking at signs. But then you hear about doctors who have patients regularly in the ICU after cosmetic surgery,
Right.
and it's typically because they've just done too much at one time. And so
Yeah.
that's the number one thing, is limit your operations, the time that you have it done. My feeling, I'd rather do 2 operations on somebody, each, let's say 3 hours, than one big 6-hour surgery.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, it's just safer. It's just because it's the recovery, it's the body's reaction to the whole thing. It's not just the potential of death in the moment, it's the aftermath.
It's traumatic on the
Right.
body. And yeah, and it's tough to recover when all parts of your body have been hurt. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I have worked in my training with patients where it's like they get a breast lift, they get a tummy tuck, they get their arms done, and lipo everywhere else. And they come out and it's just like, how are they going to survive this? It's like, oh my gosh. And they do, but it is not fun. And I get patients who will come to see me. They're like, yeah, I want a tummy tuck. And they're like, well, while we're there, can we just talk about breast implants, I guess? And so my first thing is like, okay, you could like throw in operation is like, hey, I got this mole I don't like. Can you take that off? Oh yeah, sure. But like there's certain operations like breast implants that, yeah, I mean, you really, if you're going to do it, you want to be 100% certain that you cannot live your life happily without that operation.
It would feel really weird for me to be 53 or 55 or 62 everywhere else. And then I have these things that stand up And
But I tell you, Jenny, I get patients who are in their 60s who come for a
they want
first
them.
time breast augmentation, and they're excited. And so, you know what? Sometimes like all the more
Good.
power to them.
For
But
sure.
yeah,
For sure. I mean, I
but
just can't. Yeah, no, I think also I would be too weirded out. Like, I feel like that one day we have to come up with a way that we don't need actual implants because I think I would be so weirded out by the foreign object in my
yeah.
system. I don't think I psychologically could do well with that. Like, some people can handle that, but I don't think I could handle that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Nowadays, I'm removing maybe one half as many as I'm putting in, which is
That's
the
what I
most
see. I've heard
I've
that.
ever seen, like ever. Like there's a lot of
Yeah.
people who are like, yeah, I think I'm just done with them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm taking a lot of them out nowadays.
I've heard that. I know people because I actually know people who've had the illness, and it's wild to because then they show also what it looked like after. When all breast implants come out, do they all look funky or only the
No,
ones that have caused illness?
no, even the ones that we believe may cause, somebody to get sick, there's no defining factor. That's the problem with BII, breast implant illness, is there's no way to diagnose it. The only really thing you do is you take the implants out and see if they get better. The interesting thing is the studies show that anywhere from 55 to 85% of them of patients who have their implants removed who believe they have BII will get better from their symptoms,
Huh.
significantly better.
Huh.
But we're still trying to elucidate exactly why. It's not because, let's say, the implant's broken. It's not because silicone and not saline, you get BII with both groups. We haven't really figured out exactly what it is about the implants that may be making somebody sick.
Mm.
And so, yeah, sometimes you get these scary videos that you may see of like, oh, look at the capsular contracture, scar tissue around the implant. It's like literally like the shell of an egg. I've taken those out in people who are perfectly healthy, no BII or anything, yet they have that. And other people who have rip roaring BII, and you take out implants that look absolutely pristine and they
Yeah.
get better.
So weird. You also are known for rescuing senior dogs. I think, Dr. Tony Youn, I think that is lovely.
Oh, thank
And
you.
I mean, we're a rescuing family. We have four little rescues that really rule our household. I had to move our meeting today a little late because one of them had a dangly, sebaceous something melanoma, but not a cancer one, and had to be removed because it was bleeding and stuff. And so I know what it takes to care for these little mutts, these delicious, sweet animals. But like, there's that added thing of you're going to lose them. So what got you so invested in taking care of senior dogs?
Yeah, so we had a when my wife and I got married, and it was like 2001, we did what everybody else did. We went to a pet store and bought a little puppy, and we raised a puppy. And what ended up happening, I started hearing about rescue probably about 7, 8 years ago,
Yep.
and it really struck me of like, hey, so we met this little girl. Her name was Bella, and she had cancer. She was
Oh,
8 years old, and my wife just fell in love with her the first time. Like she just jumped on her and everything. And so we adopted her, and I credit Bella because she was so, the thing with a senior dog that a lot of people don't realize is they can be so easy.
yeah.
Bella, we adopted, she came right into the house. She slept right on our bed, slept all night, every night, didn't chew on
Easy.
anything. She was well trained already, and it just made it so easy. Now, she died 2 years ago, which is so hard to lose them.
Mhm.
And we've actually lost 4 dogs in the last 6 years, and we're probably going to lose our fifth pretty soon because he's getting
Mm.
really, really old and he's kind of sick right now. But you think about where they were before you had them and then how they are. And I'm going to get like choked up if I talk too
I
much about
get that. No, it's
and
okay. I
how
know.
they are when they, take their final journey. And it is so rewarding to be able
Yeah.
to give that home to them.
Yeah.
I look at myself and I picture someday when I pass away, when I die, that I'm gonna like see the bright light and have like all these dogs come running to me. And so that's kind of what I picture someday that I'll see.
Yeah.
So
I
it's worth
really,
it.
I really think that's beautiful and true. I mean, the same thing. I always had dogs from breeders just throughout my life. And my dog Hazel, who was 16 and a half, when we lost her, she was a
Yeah.
gift on my 35th birthday. And she was a reject from a show breeder in Ohio. And she was a birthday gift from somebody for me. And she was a standard poodle, this incredible dog who was like easy, easy, easy until her last few years, right? And then the last like 6 months were really rough.
Yeah.
But I think about these senior dogs that, because right now the 4 rescues we started rescuing same time you did, 7.5 years ago was when I, around 7 years ago when we started rescuing. And I just would see you see these dogs that have lived a really nice life, but then the minute they start having the growths, or they start having accidents, or they start having arthritis, or they start waking up in the middle of the night, because that can happen with some dogs, and whatever, that the owners give them up. And then my heart breaks, because I'm like, that dog's looking for their family,
Yeah.
and they don't have a family at a time in their lives when they really need the family. Like, it's so mean. And I don't know, there's something very, very beautiful about caring for an animal through the whole life process. It's to me super rewarding. I mean, even with my dogs, they drive us nuts. We love them. I love them. My heart
Yeah.
breaks if they don't feel well. Like,
Yeah.
I know why you get choked up. They're
I
magical
think,
creatures.
and I've been very blessed in that financially we can afford to take care of these dogs. And I've had
Yes, yes.
some of the owners where they say, we really want you to take this,
Oh,
or the rescue, like, we want you to take him because we know that he's going to have a lot of medical bills, and we know you'll take care of it. And it's like, my wife and I are dedicated. Of course we will. It's a member of our family now.
yes.
But I sympathize. I know not everybody is in that position, and it kind of is what it is there. But that's something that I think that we're very fortunate that we can do that.
Yeah. Do you do some of it yourself because you're a doctor, not of animals, but like, do you know what you have to like deal with or not do? Like, you wouldn't remove something from a dog?
No, no, gosh, no. Yeah,
Okay.
our vet loves us because, oh my gosh, the amount of money we have spent at the
Of
vets
course.
with the bills. Oh my gosh. But in the end, it's worth it. And I think that, for
Yes.
people who are listening, it's like, it can be very easy to adopt an older dog, because oftentimes, especially, you go to a rescue and they're in foster care, and you can get a lot of information about that
Yeah.
dog versus adopting, or versus buying one from a breeder where you don't know the personality of that dog. Rescues, especially if they're in foster care, they can give you so much
Yeah.
information, and you can really know whether that dog is going to fit in your family. And it can be so, so easy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I think rescue dogs know. I just do. I just think they know something. They come with a story, and
They
it's
all do.
very, very, yeah, it's really,
I'm proud to say I've only named we've named two of our dogs, like our original dog. And then there was one, Penny, who we adopted recently. She died in August. We only had her
mm,
for a year, unfortunately, but her name was Pound Cake. They named her like Pound. We're like, oh, we're going to change it. And she was deaf, so she didn't know
it
her
didn't
name anyway.
matter. Right. She didn't care. You did a recent reel or TikTok, probably the same thing, different logos, where and then did you use a teenage filter?
Oh yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was dying. I was like, wait, is that Tony's son? And then I'm like,
No,
no, it's not. It's a fucking teenage filter. And it was such good use of the filter.
thank you.
Yeah. You're very creative.
I came up with this idea of a mom bringing her teenage son in. Mom wants the teenage son to stop vaping and can't get through to him. So then the doctor speaks in Gen Z language that
Uh-huh.
nobody can understand. And then the teenager's like, oh my gosh, you're so cool. And then at the end, they make fun of the mom who thinks that she can be cool too. But now she uses, like, what she said, I think it was like, totally radical to the max. That's like, ooh,
So
cringy.
good. Yeah. So you're having fun doing this, aren't you?
Oh, it's fun. Yeah. I mean, it's for me, you know what? If it's a blessing, if I can make somebody chuckle and make thousands of people chuckle, like, I can help 20 patients in my office in a day, or I can help hundreds of thousands of people, just give them, 30 seconds of a laugh. It really is a privilege to be able to do that.
Well, I think you're doing a great job. I love your feed. I like that you speak up about the things you want to speak up about. You seem unafraid, which is really cool too. I love the real or sus stuff. I do,
My
because it's,
my kids
yeah,
joke, they're like, Dad, how is it you haven't been canceled yet? Well, I'm pretty careful.
you're really careful. Yeah, you never give like, yeah, no, you definitely don't. Yeah, no, I think I've never worried that there was any sort of exposure to you,
No,
like
no.
litigious. You're good. You're
Yeah.
good about that. You never
I
say you
try.
know for sure. And it's fair game when everybody's talking about it. I don't think it's wrong for you to weigh in. I don't see you as any sort of like bully or anything.
No,
Doctor, yeah. What were you gonna say?
no, I said I try not to be.
Yeah, no, you're not a bully. Thank you for being on my podcast. You guys, you could check out Dr. Tony Youn all across social media. His feeds are great, just terrific. And if you go to, is it dryoun.com, drtonyyoun.com?
Yeah, and I've got my skincare line, which is younbeauty.com as well.
Perfect. And you've again, it's not just because you're on TikTok and Instagram or whatever. You've been a really well-respected, good, solid doctor for many, many years. You just became internet famous in the past like 3. So I just want people to realize that you're actually a doctor first and a personality second, if you will. Yeah. And yeah, well, it's important to make that distinction. Thank you for being on my podcast.
Thank you, Jenny.
And you guys, you can follow me on Instagram at Just Jenny Hutt, on TikTok and Twitter at Jenny Hutt. Any questions or comments about this episode, email justjennypod@gmail.com. And I'll be back here per usual tomorrow.